fake racism claim backfires. He got deported. You know what really gets under my skin? When people mistake kindness or professionalism for weakness. I've never been one to kiss up or bow down to ego, but apparently someone in my office thought I should. What started as a standard job in a new tech office quickly unraveled into backstabbing, lies, and a fake racism claim that nearly destroyed one of my best team members. But here's the twist. They came for my team, and I sent one of them straight out of the country. It all began in the early 2010s when I was hired as the web development team lead for a large internet-based company expanding in the UK. They had just opened a new London office, and I was one of the first people brought in to help build out the infrastructure and lead a team from the ground up. Alongside me were two other team leads, Emma, who headed the content team, and Andy, the lead for SEO. We all reported to the office manager, and the mood in the office was your usual mix of chaos and startup excitement. During the interview process, Andy and the office manager were the ones grilling me. Andy in particular kept asking these loaded "can you do this" questions, and I gave honest, confident answers. Not just yes, but often you'd actually get better results if you tried this other approach. I wasn't trying to show off, I just knew my craft. But looking back, I think that's where it all went wrong. Andy must have interpreted my competence as compliance, like I was auditioning to be his personal yes man. So when I came in and started actually leading, making independent calls, rejecting bad ideas, and explaining why my dev team needed to do things a certain way, he didn't take it well, at all. He started pushing back hard, coming to me with vague, half-baked ideas and expecting me to drop everything to follow them. And when I didn't, he'd run straight to the office manager and file a complaint. Every single time. Luckily, the manager wasn't clueless. I had experience, and my reasoning was always sound, so the complaints died as quickly as they were raised. But Andy's ego? It didn't let go that easily. Over the course of that first year, the tension between us simmered just under the surface. I stayed focused on my team and the projects in front of me, but it was clear Andy resented me. He wasn't used to someone challenging his ideas, especially someone who had the technical authority to back it up. What I didn't realize at the time was just how far he'd eventually go to try and tear me down. Things finally came to a head during one of the most high-pressure weeks of my career. My team and I had been working non-stop to develop 2 brand new websites for the company, projects that would be showcased to the executive board. It wasn't just about design. These sites had to function flawlessly, represent the company's brand, and go live immediately after approval. The pressure was intense, but the stakes were clear. Nail this, and our office would prove itself as a serious player in the company's future. The presentation was scheduled at the company's head office several hours away from our London branch. I left midday to check into a hotel across the street from the main building and get in a few last-minute tweaks before the big meeting. That evening, I opened my laptop to run through the sites one final time, confident that we were ready. But, of course, fate had other plans. While testing the functionality, I stumbled across a major bug. Not a cosmetic issue. This was something that could cripple the entire website if left unresolved. And with just hours to go before our presentation to the board, panic started to set in. I immediately reached out to Johnny, my senior developer, and most trusted team member, who was still back in the London office. Johnny didn't hesitate. We both rolled up our sleeves, him working from the office and me from my hotel room. For the next 12 hours, we went line by line through the code, testing, troubleshooting, and rebuilding segments of the site from scratch. No dinner, no breaks, just pure, focused chaos. Around 7 a.m., the bug was finally dead. I barely had time to shower, throw on a fresh shirt, and grab a quick bite before heading across the street for the 10 a.m. board meeting. I was running on 0 sleep and more caffeine than any human should legally consume. As I walked into the boardroom, the CEO, someone I'd only met a couple times, took one look at me and asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. We had found a serious issue the night before, and Johnny and I had worked through the night to fix it in time. What I expected was maybe a polite nod. What I got was stunned silence, followed by overwhelming praise. The board was not only impressed by the websites, but by the dedication and commitment that had gone into making them bulletproof. Under pressure. The CEO personally pulled me aside afterward, thanked me for going above and beyond, and told me to go home and get some well-deserved rest. I hopped on the train back to London, completely exhausted but proud beyond words. When I got back, I treated my team to a lunch out, a small token of appreciation for everything they'd done. Later, the office manager decided to take it a step further and organized a proper celebration for the entire office. Drinks, music, and a fancy venue. It was the first time in a while that things felt good, but that celebration would end up being the moment everything turned upside down. Monday morning came, and I walked into the office still feeling the afterglow of our success and the hangover from the weekend's celebrations. But something was off. The usual buzz of morning chatter was missing, replaced by hushed voices and darting glances. Before I could make sense of it, Emma, the content team lead, approached me, her expression tense. "I don't know what's going on," she whispered, "but something serious is happening. HR's here, from head office." Minutes later, all team leads were summoned into a cramped meeting room. Inside were 2 HR reps, the office manager, and the 3 of us, me, Emma, and Andy. The room was heavy with tension, and I could tell from Andy's too neutral face that he already knew why we were there. That's when the bomb dropped. One of the HR reps cleared her throat and informed us that a formal complaint had been made against Johnny, my right-hand man, the same guy who had just pulled off a miracle with me a few nights before. The allegation? That Johnny had made racist comments during the Friday night outing at the club? I was stunned. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. This wasn't just unexpected. It was wildly out of character for Johnny. He was one of the most respectful, grounded people I knew. The complaint, it turned out, had been made by Mark, a member of Andy's SEO team. According to HR, Mark had called Andy that night from outside the club, claiming he had just heard Johnny make several offensive remarks. Andy backed the story up immediately, playing the part of the concerned team leader. He said we couldn't allow someone like that in the office, not in a professional environment like ours. He pushed hard, too hard, now that I think back on it, for Johnny's termination. The rest of the day was consumed by interviews. HR spoke with nearly everyone who had been at the club that night, trying to find corroborating testimony. But nobody else heard anything even remotely close to what Mark described. No off-color jokes, no slurs, nothing, just music, dancing, and coworkers blowing off steam. By the end of the day, HR reconvened with us. Their verdict was that there wasn't enough evidence to act. It was essentially Mark's word against Johnny's, and while they couldn't ignore the complaint entirely, they weren't going to crucify Johnny over it either. Instead, he was issued a formal warning, a note in his file, and a reminder to be careful how his words might be interpreted in the future. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best outcome under the circumstances, except Andy wasn't satisfied. He pushed again, insisting Johnny be fired. That, more than anything, set off red flags. Why was he so adamant about punishment when no one else supported the claim? Why was he treating this like a personal vendetta? Emma and I exchanged looks. Neither of us said it out loud in the room, but we were both thinking the same thing. Something about this didn't add up. At the time, I chalked it up to Andy being vindictive. Maybe he saw Johnny's success as a threat to his influence. But the truth, as I'd soon learn, was far worse. This wasn't just office politics anymore. It was calculated sabotage. In the weeks that followed, things in the office returned to what looked like normal. But the energy had shifted. Johnny did his best to brush off the incident and focus on work. But I could tell the accusation had rattled him. Who wouldn't be affected by something like that? He knew he hadn't said anything racist, but the very suggestion had painted a target on his back. He walked a little more carefully, spoke a little less freely, and I hated seeing him like that. Meanwhile, Andy seemed smug, subtly so, but enough for me to notice. He acted like he'd won something, and that unsettled me more than anything. I couldn't prove it, but deep down I knew this whole thing had been orchestrated. Still, suspicion alone wasn't enough to act. I kept my head down and waited. If there was more to this, I needed something solid. Then, like fate had a grudge to settle, the truth walked straight into my office. One afternoon, a member of the content team asked if we could talk in private. He looked uneasy, like he was carrying something heavy. We stepped into one of the small meeting rooms, and the second the door shut, he unloaded a story that made my blood boil. He told me that on the night of the party, Andy hadn't even been there. He was at home. But Mark had stepped outside the club during the evening and called Andy. The conversation wasn't casual. It was tactical. The two of them had planned the entire accusation. They knew Johnny hadn't said anything racist. That wasn't the point. Their goal was to get Johnny fired. And not because of anything he did, but because they wanted to make me look bad. The real plan was deeper than a personal grudge against Johnny. Andy had grown tired of me blocking his half-baked ideas and standing my ground, so he wanted me out. The strategy? Get my best guy fired, then blame me for poor leadership. Frame it like I was tolerating toxic behavior on my team. Make me look incompetent. Eventually, get me replaced. It was a full-on character assassination attempt, with Johnny as collateral damage. I asked the guy why he hadn't said anything to HR during the investigation. Turns out he did. He told HR what he overheard that night, but it was just his word against Andy and Mark's. Without evidence, HR couldn't act on it, and the story was buried. I thanked him, but inside I was fuming. I mean, steam out of your ears, cartoon character level fuming. But I didn't show it. I didn't even tell Johnny. The last thing I wanted was for him to blow up or confront someone without proof. I needed to be smart, strategic. So I did the one thing they didn't expect. I watched. I tracked every move Andy and Mark made, watched how they worked, who they talked to, and what they didn't do. I was waiting for something, anything that would give me the leverage I needed. It was only a matter of time before the mask slipped, and when it did, I'd be ready. It wasn't long after I decided to stay alert that my patience paid off, in the most unexpected way possible. The office we worked in was a 3-story building with a central staircase connecting each floor. That stairwell also had a side door that led straight to the street, and I used it often. At the time, I was a casual smoker, and stepping outside for a quick smoke was my way of resetting whenever things got intense. One afternoon, I pushed open the door to the stairwell, planning to take my usual break. And who do I find standing there? Mark, mid-phone call. The second he saw me, he froze. He didn't hang up. Probably didn't want to look suspicious, but the color drained from his face. He looked like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar now. I didn't stop. I just kept walking like it was no big deal. But as I passed, I picked up just enough of his conversation to realize something was off. He was asking about application requirements and visa sponsorship. From the sound of it, he was talking to a school, or something pretending to be one. It wasn't casual or personal. It was desperate. It took all my self-control not to react right there. That call didn't feel like someone planning a course. It felt like someone scrambling to fix a problem, urgently. Visa questions, student applications, while on company time, I didn't have proof yet, but my gut told me I just walked in on something much bigger than petty office sabotage. Played it cool, didn't mention it to anyone, and kept going about my day like nothing had happened. But that moment stayed in my mind. It was the crack in the armor I'd been waiting for. A few days later, I traveled back to head office for another scheduled meeting. We had a new office manager by then, one who operated primarily from HQ, and I decided it was time to plant a seed. I pulled him aside privately and said something along the lines of, "Hey, this might be nothing, but I overheard one of the SEO team members talking about visas and school applications in the stairwell. It sounded a little off. Just thought it might be worth a look." That was it. No accusations, no drama, just enough information to put something in motion. I didn't need to dig further. I just needed someone with authority to start asking the right questions. Then I waited. For days, nothing changed. Nothing. Mark kept showing up to work like normal. No blow-ups, no red flags. I started to wonder if anything was even going to come of it. But then, just like that, he vanished. At first, it was subtle. Mark just didn't show up to the office one morning. No emails, no messages, nothing. People asked where he was, but there were no answers. A day passed, then 2, then 3. Eventually, word started to leak out. Not officially, of course, but through the usual office grapevine. Mark had been fired, effective immediately. No notice, no farewell party, no goodbye drinks. Just gone. And the reason? He no longer had the legal right to work in the UK. Apparently, the company had looked into his visa status after my quiet tip, and they didn't like what they found. Mark had been in the UK on a dependent visa, tied to his wife's student visa. That arrangement is legit, but it comes with an expiration date. His wife had recently completed her course, which meant their window to apply for a new visa was quickly closing. Rather than go through proper channels or talk to the company about sponsorship, Mark had tried to handle it the sketchy way. Now, if you know anything about visa scams, you've probably heard about those fake colleges that pop up in cities like London. They're tiny, barely furnished offices pretending to be educational institutions. They enroll foreign students in fake classes, just so those students can apply for or extend a student visa. It's a shady workaround. And if you get caught, well, let's just say the UK government doesn't play around. From what I gathered, Mark had been trying to buy his way into one of those colleges. Not to study, of course, but just to stay in the country. That was the phone call I overheard in the stairwell, him desperately trying to find a loophole to keep living and working in the UK without raising red flags. Too late. The company wanted nothing to do with it. They weren't about to get tangled in visa fraud or risk government scrutiny by sponsoring someone involved in that kind of scheme. So when they confirmed his status, they cut ties immediately. No appeals, no HR meetings, no going away lunch. Just a quiet escort out the door, and within weeks, Mark and his wife were back in Dubai. Poetic, really. He'd tried to destroy someone's livelihood with a lie, tried to ruin my team, sabotage my reputation, and climb some imaginary ladder built on manipulation and fraud. And in the end, he burned himself. He gambled on a fake story, and he lost everything. After Mark's sudden disappearance, the office shifted again. Only this time it wasn't tense. It was quieter, lighter, almost like everyone could breathe a little easier without knowing exactly why. Andy, on the other hand, looked rattled. He didn't say much about Mark, didn't ask questions or offer explanations. He just carried on, more reserved than usual. And that's when I knew. He was worried I knew the truth. He was right. Once the dust settled, I pulled Johnny aside for a private conversation. I hadn't told him anything up until that point. I needed to protect both him and the plan, but now that it was over, he deserved to know exactly what had happened. I laid everything out. The fabricated accusation, the overheard phone call, the fake college visa scheme, how the complaint wasn't about anything he'd done, but about taking me down by targeting the most vital member of my team. Him, Johnny, was speechless. You could see it in his face, processing the fact that someone he barely interacted with had weaponized a lie so serious, so damaging, just to hit someone else indirectly. At first, he looked stunned, then disgusted, then quietly furious. "I can't believe they would do that," he said. "And over what? Ego?" I apologized. I told him that even though he wasn't the intended target, he got caught in the crossfire of someone trying to destroy me. But Johnny wouldn't hear it. "You don't owe me an apology," he said. "You went above and beyond to protect me. Most people would have lost their cool or thrown someone under the bus. You waited, played it smart, and got them without getting your hands dirty. That's rare. That meant a lot. Not just because it validated the decisions I'd made, but because it reminded me why I'd gone through all the trouble in the first place. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of it. It was about loyalty, about protecting the people who had my back, even when they didn't know it. But I wasn't quite finished. A few days later, I caught Andy alone. No one around, no witnesses, just the two of us in a quiet corner of the office. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten him. I didn't even accuse him directly. I just looked him in the eyes and said, "I know what you and Mark did. I know exactly why you did it. And I want you to know, I'm not going to forget it. You should be very careful from here on out." He didn't say a word, didn't deny it, didn't defend himself, just stood there, completely still, like someone trying not to trigger a landmine. 2 months later, he handed in his notice. No explanation, no farewell emails. He just left, quietly, completely, and for good. After Andy left, things finally felt right again. The air in the office was clearer. The toxic weight that had been pressing down on everyone, quietly, invisibly, was gone. Johnny thrived. Emma relaxed. My team grew stronger, tighter, and though no one ever said it out loud, I think everyone knew some invisible war had been fought and won. Not with screaming or HR showdowns, but with patience, strategy, and the quiet kind of justice that hits the hardest. Over the years, I've told this story to a few people, close friends, colleagues, and without fail, someone always asks the same question, do you feel guilty? And my answer never changes. I feel guilty that Johnny had to go through that. That someone as good-hearted and hardworking as him had to spend even one day under the weight of a false accusation. I hate that he was used as a pawn in someone else's power game. But do I feel guilty about what happened to Mark? Not for a second. He faked a racism claim to ruin someone's life and career. He tried to get my team dismantled. He tried to get me fired. And in the end, he played stupid games and won the stupidest prize imaginable. Deportation. And Andy? He slithered. Out with his tail between his legs. No fanfare, no glory. Just the empty knowledge that he'd lost. That I'd outsmarted him without ever sinking to his level. So no, I don't regret anything I did. Because here's the thing. You can come for me. You can challenge me, disagree with me, even try to compete with me. But the second you go after my team, my people, that's when the gloves come off. You don't mess with my friends. You don't mess with my family. And you damn sure don't mess with my team.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.